we're going to use the definition of the derivative to differentiate f of x equals to secant of the square root of x. So to do it, we'll need the following two results. The first one is a trig identity, cosine alpha minus cosine of beta is equal to minus 2 times sine of alpha plus beta over 2 times sine of alpha minus beta over 2. And the second result we're going to need is that the limit as y approaches 0 of sine y over y is 1. So now we can proceed with the computation of the derivative of secant of square root of x. Recall that the derivative of a function f is defined as the limit as h goes to 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x divided by h. So in our case, our function f is secant of square root of x, so this is limit h goes to 0, secant of the square root of x plus h minus secant of the square root of x divided by h. Now all we have to do is evaluate this limit, and to do it will involve several steps. The first step is to express this in terms of cosine. So this is limit as h goes to 0, 1 divided by cosine of square root of x plus h minus 1 divided by cosine of the square root of x all over h. Now we're going to need to simplify this numerator, so that will require a common denominator. We'll multiply 1 over cosine of square root of x plus h by cosine of square root of x over cosine of square root of x, and 1 over cosine of square root of x, we'll multiply that by cosine of square root of x plus h over cosine of square root of x plus h. Now let's simplify this. This gives us the limit as h goes to 0, cosine of square root of x minus cosine of square root of x plus h divided by cosine of square root of x plus h times cosine of square root of x divided by h. Now this is equivalent to having h slide right over here into this denominator and multiply cosine of square root of x plus h times cosine of square root of x. So let's write that. This is equal to the limit as h approaches 0, cosine of square root of x minus cosine of square root of x plus h divided by h times cosine of square root of x plus h times cosine of square root of x. Now we have to do a little bit more in the denominator. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this h and then take x and add it to h and then subtract x from there. So this, you can see, is the same as having h there. X minus x is 0, so we just have h. The reason we need that will become apparent in just a second. This is equal to, we're now going to factor the denominator, particularly this part of the denominator. So this is the limit as h goes to 0. We have cosine of square root of x minus cosine of square root of x plus h, and this is divided by, when we factor, we end up with square root of x plus h minus square root of x times square root of x plus h plus square root of x times cosine square root of x plus h times cosine of square root of x. Next thing we're going to do is use the first result. I'm going to call square root of x here alpha and square root of x plus h beta. So we're going to use the trig identity now to simplify the numerator, to express it in a different way that will help us in the solution process. This is limit as h goes to 0, using the trig identity. This is minus 2 times sine of alpha plus beta, so that's square root of x plus square root of x plus h divided by 2 times sine of alpha minus beta, square root of x minus square root of x plus h divided by 2. And this is all divided by square root of x plus h minus square root of x times square root of x plus h plus square root of x times cosine of square root of x plus h times cosine of square root of x. Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to multiply this by 2 over 2. And the 2 we see in the numerator with a minus there will cancel with this 2. But the second 2 there in the denominator will stay. So this is equal to the limit as h goes to 0. We now have a minus sine of square root of x plus h plus square root of x over 2. And now the second sign, I'm going to write it like this. This is sine of minus square root of x plus h minus square root of x divided by 2 divided by square root of x plus h minus square root of x over 2 times square root of x plus h plus square root of x times cosine of square root of x plus h times cosine of square root of x. Now with this sign filters out negative, so this minus that I'm circling here will be filtered out, and along with this minus here will become 1. And now we're going to write this as a product of two limits. The first limit will be, so this is limit as h goes to 0, of sine of square root of x plus h minus square root of x over 2 divided by square root of x plus h minus square root of x over 2. And of course the second limit, limit as h goes to 0, is going to have sine square root of x plus h plus square root of x over 2. And this is divided by square root of x plus h plus square root of x times cosine of square root of x plus h times cosine of square root of x. Now for the first limit, in the first limit, we're going to make the substitution. Let y equal to square root of x plus h minus square root of x divided by 2. Notice that as h goes to 0, y will approach square root of x minus square root of x over 2, so y will also go to 0. And now we can finish this problem. The first limit is now limit y goes to 0 sine y over y. That's result number 2. This limit is 1 times the limit as h goes to 0. We have in the numerator sine square root of x plus h plus square root of x over 2. In the denominator we have square root of x plus h plus square root of x times cosine of square root of x plus h plus or times cosine of square root of x. Let now h go to 0 in the second limit. The first limit is 1 times the second limit. We have sine square root of x plus square root of x over 2. In the denominator we have square root of x plus square root of x times cosine of square root of x times cosine of square root of x. And let's write it like this. This is equal to 1 divided by 2 square root of x. And then notice that we have inside the sign 2 square root of x over 2, which is just sine of square root of x. So we'll write it as sine of square root of x over cosine of square root of x, and then times 1 over cosine of square root of x. We're now ready to write the answer in a nice way. 1 over cosine square root of x is secant of square root of x. Sine square root of x over cosine square root of x is tangent of square root of x. And of course, this is divided by 2 times square root of x. That's going to be our final answer. Let's summarize this. We started with a function. Our function was f of x equals to secant of square root of x. We used the definition of the derivative to show that the derivative of this function is equal to secant square root of x times the tangent of square root of x divided by 2 times square root of x. For more videos, visit www.mathprepvideos.com.